What is cloud migration and things you should know before migrating? It wasn't that long ago that you had to jump through a whole amount of hoops in order to set up IT infrastructure. It involved buying a whole bunch of hardware, configuring all that hardware, setting it up, getting approvals, installing software, configuring it, and then maintaining it. I can tell you from personal experience this is not a quick and easy process. It's also one that's not cheap up front, nor is it cheap to maintain on an ongoing basis. And this is where the cloud comes into it and why it's succeeding in such a large way. In this article, I'm going to take you through what is cloud migration and some of the best things you can do and understand about cloud migrations. We'll break this down into 4 key points. What is cloud migration? The different types of cloud migration, the benefits of cloud migration, and then finally, some of the challenges involved in migrating to the cloud. I'm Matt Grace, Managing Director of Flying Donkey. Let's get into it. All right, first one off the rank, what is cloud migration? Keep this short and sharp. Simply put, it's where you're migrating your IT infrastructure into the cloud. Now, the cloud itself, we generally note as one of the 3 main competitors, which is Microsoft's Azure, Google's Google Cloud Platform, or Amazon's AWS product. Now, either your internal IT team can migrate your existing infrastructure into the cloud, or you can use the outside help of someone else. Simply put here, cloud migration is taking your IT infrastructure and putting it into one of the 3 main cloud providers. What are the main challenges of migrating to the cloud? Cloud migration isn't a simple one fix and it's done sort of situation. There are a few key things that you're going to have to keep in mind when doing this. First and foremost is going to be cost. Doing a cloud migration piece is a project in itself, and therefore there's going to be cost involved in doing the project. Once you've also shifted to the cloud, there will be cost involved paying to one of those cloud subscriptions. And generally speaking, your cloud subscription is going to cost less than your on-premise service. It's key to keep in mind when you're doing this cost comparison that to do a like-for-like comparison. You're going to need to include all things such as server rent, plus location rent and office rent, air conditioning, utilities, monitoring, and overhead staff. The cloud is an all-in-one solution that not only gives you hardware, but it also gives you maintenance as well. Executive buy-in. This one sometimes is missed, but you're going to have to get key managerial buy-in in order to do a project like this. A cloud migration can be hugely disruptive because you're taking your core backbone of your business, which is your IT infrastructure, and moving it from on-premise into the cloud. Approaching executives up front, pitching the long-term benefits of the cloud is going to be key in order to get this project both off the ground and finished in a good way. Skills shortage. Now, migrating to the cloud is a high skill task. It's new age, it's only been around for a few years, and there's really big compliance and security things that go with it. With an ever-changing market and every business running to get to the cloud, there's a huge strain on skills and resources in order to achieve this. With cloud only being around for such a small amount of time, it's meant that the population of cloud experts is fairly minimal compared to the amount of businesses that are trying to get into the cloud. Here at Flying Donkey, we are cloud migration experts, as we've done numerous migrations for our clients. The options are hiring someone like us as an external company to come and help you, or go out to the market and try to hire an employee to assist you. Key thing to keep in mind is there is a shortage of cloud migration experts generally, so this could be a challenge for your cloud migration. Alright, what are the best practices for cloud migration? As cloud migration is a project, we're going to run through a pretty standard approach that we do for both this and other projects within Flying Donkey. And you would have heard me talk about a number of these in other videos. First and foremost, it's always important to go with a plan. Now, migrating to the cloud is going to be a big disruption to your business, potentially. It is moving a key asset of your business into the cloud and potentially may mean some downtime. You're going to need to plan exactly what assets you have and when and where you're going to move them. You're also going to have to put in some backup plans and some rollback plans, but it's important to plan for all the foreseeable scenarios that you can. Without planning, you're planning to fail, so therefore it's important as your first step to plan the cloud migration. But secondly, once you've got that plan together, it's key to really review your entire infrastructure of IT. Now, I don't know if you keep current records of everything you've got in your IT infrastructure, but I know with clients that we run through, they've always found extra things along the way. It's key to see if you've had direct internet lines out into your current data center, and maybe you've got to utilize some of the cloud direct connect functionality. For example, AWS offers a direct connect service. You need to make sure that the cloud is going to run well for your business and you have got all the infrastructure that you currently use moving and shifting into the cloud. Once you move into the cloud, the final thing to design is a cloud governance framework. And this is where you've now got everything into the cloud and you want to work out how you're going to manage and monitor this on an ongoing basis. You've probably heard some of the disaster stories where cloud bills run into the tens, potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is because there was no governance or monitoring framework in place, and there's very simple things you can do to stop bills spiraling out of control. It's important from both also a security and audit perspective to have this in place, so that if you are going for anything like a SOC 2 or ISO 27001, you are covered by those compliance certificates. Alright, we've now learned what cloud migration is and some of the challenges, but what types of cloud migration are there? I'm going to run through the 6 R's, which are 6 different ways you can look at attacking your cloud infrastructure. Now, some of these are pick and mix, which means you can select some of these for some portions of infrastructure and others for others. And I'll talk about this at the end with a good example. First one is rehosting. This is a lift and shift, and this is what I generally recommend for any small scale proof of concept or even just trying to get a project off the ground. So if you're looking at your infrastructure and shifting it in place as it is into the cloud. An example of this is simply using a virtual machine product from any of the cloud providers. So rather than going to their platform as a service, you're just lifting and shifting into the cloud to get into the cloud as a first instance, and then you'll refine it from there. Replatforming. This one is similar to lift and shift, though what you're trying to do here is use some of the cloud-first technologies as part of your new stack. So let's say, for example, you have a local SQL server, but you want to use, say, Azure SQL Server on the cloud. Now, this is a very close but similar product, but it is actually a platform as a service. And so therefore, you're actually re-platforming from using a direct SQL server to using a platform as a service as an Azure SQL. This is a very simple example, but there is much more complex platforming that can be done, and this falls into our next part, refactoring. Now, obviously, moving to the cloud, you may have to actually change how your systems are architected, or maybe how your code is functioning in your systems. Refactoring can be a more holistic approach to using all the best parts of all the cloud services. Refactoring can end up being quite a big project and may take a significant amount of time. That's why in some cases I recommend the lift and shift approach beforehand and then refactor once you're in the cloud. But if you're able to refactor prior to moving, it can make the move a little bit simpler. Here you can move your code into things like Kubernetes and then migrate the Kubernetes clusters into the cloud. Essentially, you're refactoring and then moving up into the cloud after that point. Repurchasing. This one again goes a bit more hand in hand with the first point, but essentially what you're doing is you're lifting and shifting your application and then just repurchasing licenses up in the cloud. Rather than looking to replace your technology, you're looking just to take forward what you existingly have and repurchase those licenses going forward. You may do a repurchasing strategy as part of your lift and shift, and then come back and look at a refactor. Something just to keep in mind depending on the applications and how old they are. Retiring. As I mentioned, generally when you're doing a review of your full infrastructure, we find clients find things that they didn't even know they had as part of their IT infrastructure. It's a very good time to retire some of these services, potentially old legacy servers or legacy pieces of software you don't use anymore. As you're moving all of it, it's a good place to clean it up and make it nice and new in the cloud. And finally, number 6 is revisiting. I've already touched on this point with a few comments, but essentially once you're in the cloud, you can always revisit it and come back and refactor or rechange things as you want. Getting to the cloud is really a long-term strategic decision. I always recommend trying to get there something first, like a lift and shift, and then refactoring or rehosting as you're required and use the services that the cloud has to offer. The benefits of migrating to the cloud. There's a number of benefits of migrating to the cloud, but I'll try and just touch on 3 main ones here. Lower costs. As I said at the start, it's important to consider the cost benefits between the cloud and your current IT infrastructure. Now, in doing this equation, it's key to keep in mind that obviously when you're hosting your IT infrastructure, you're not only paying for the hardware, equipment, and licensing, you're also paying for the room that it's in and also the staff to maintain it. Once all this is taken into an account, you should run with lower costs on the cloud. This obviously makes sense because these companies operate at significant scale, and therefore they can take this off your hands for a much cheaper price. Again, there are instances where this may not be the case, and it's key to do a cost analysis on your cloud platform prior to migrating to make sure you are getting the best cost for your cloud migration. Scalability. Now this one is probably one of the biggest reasons that people move to the cloud, and it's scalability and also speed of movement. A simple example here is that operating 2 data centers in a single country is probably beyond the reach of most businesses. Whereas in the cloud, you can simply deploy your application in 2 areas or 2 data centers with the click of a button. And this means you've automatically got Jira redundancy built into your IT infrastructure. Further on from that, you can actually deploy these into data centers across the world with the same click of a button, because once you're on the cloud platform, the scalability is enormous. Spinning up servers in your existing IT infrastructure may take significant amounts of time, but here, click of the button and you'll have more scalability. And this is one of the big drivers as to why the cloud is winning so much business and helping clients move their software faster than ever. Finally, and a really important one, is constantly updating software. As I mentioned before, part of the cloud offering is essentially the support and maintenance that these big providers provide. And one of those big things they do is constantly updating software. If we go back to the Azure SQL example for a second, previously if you had your own SQL server, you were the one responsible for updating that SQL's version. With Azure SQL, that's now shifted to Microsoft as the provider to update that themselves. They do this far more regularly to try and keep it easy for themselves. But for you as the end user, what this means is that your SQL server is always patched and always up to date without you having to even lift a finger. Now remember, this is also a hidden cost that you used to have, which is where someone's job was to go around and maintain the actual servers. This service is now built into the cloud, and it means you can comply with security and audits far easier without the overhead of doing this yourself. Alright, to summarize this video up, what's the takeaway? Well, the big takeaway is cloud migration is now, and if you're a business in the IT space, you need to be on the cloud today. It's important to understand that it brings not only cost benefits to your business, but also benefits around scalability, security, and expandability that mean you can keep up and beat your competitors in your space. The cloud is going to be a key ingredient for many years to come, and realistically, you need to shift now if you're already not moving to the cloud. Here at Flying Donkey, we've done numerous cloud migration projects, and we can really help you harness the power of the cloud. If you need any help or have any questions, feel free to reach out.